This manifesto is the official response to the encyclical letter that Pope John Paul II published in 1998. As you can see in point 46 below, he denounced the fact that science and philosophy had come to conclusions opposite to those of Jesus Christ. In fact, science had become convinced of the existence of a universe in itself, perpetually advancing in time and without anyone having created it. Philosophy with Nietzsche had come to postulate nothingness. As a true believer in the truth of Jesus Christ, science and philosophy had to be in error, and it was up to the philosophers to open the new path that with scientific and philosophical truth would confirm the revelations of Jesus as true. Point 56 here on the side launches a real new Messiah who, strengthened by the truth of the Holy Spirit, subverts the results of science and philosophy. The new path is announced in this video by Romano Amadeo, an 83-year-old philosopher of science who graduated in architecture and then embarked on an in-depth study of the architecture of reality. He subverts the idea that everyone has that the dynamics that we see as real is true. He does this in essence by saying that the dynamic of human life is similar to that of the sun, which rises and then sets, but none of its revolving around the earth is true, since it is the earth that revolves around the sun. Romano Amadeo argues that our real vision is relative, of the electrical and material side to the equal and opposite magnetic and antimaterial side. The two opposites are in action simultaneously as +1 and -1, and by composing their simultaneous action, the result is certainly that -1 of the universe retracting and retracting to its beginning. Amadeo says that we see instead the +1 growth of time because, instead of combining the opposite cycles of -10 and +10, we combine the two reciprocal values 10(1) multiplied by October 1st, obtaining the growth of 10/10 equal to +1. But the two reciprocal values are not equal and opposite, because if they are opposite as 10 and 1/10, they are not equal. Instead, -1 and +1 are equal in unity and contrary in sign. Amadeo has been struggling alone for more than 20 years now, but by denying the value of truth to the dynamics in which everyone believes, he is making the same effort to make himself understood as Galileo Galilei did in his time. I now present to you the manifesto translated with machine translation into English. Since its beginning, science and philosophy have sought the absolute reason for things, and have not found it. They have not defined with certainty who we are, where we come from, where we are going, and whether there is a goal in existence, which in all respects satisfies reason, heart and justice. Well, this manifesto of perfection, through the fundamental truths of science, gives you the answers you have so far found impossible. We are immortal souls, Elohim of an absolute value, called to defeat as its real infinitesimals every constraint and determination. Gifted with the privilege of constructing with freedom and justice our own taste for existence, with the perfect cross-balance between an incoming and an outgoing life. Slaves to the constraints received from an almighty possibilistic system, we are directed to be able to use it freely by becoming its masters. We will download onto our I every life that the system has configured, and we will be able to be it in a real way as we are today in our bodies. Each I in the infinite variety of its values that it will have made its own, will be its neighbor as itself, indefinitely and as long as it pleases. In an infinite communion of Holy Spirits and in all the variations of fathers, mothers, children, brothers and sisters, and in the extreme richness of their relative differences and peculiarities. The Absolute has adopted the Roman proverb, divide and rule, and, dividing itself into all infinite possibilities, has defeated the determination which imposes a beginning and an end on everything. Having said who we are, where we come from, where we are going, its how and its why, it is now science that must prove it true in this manifesto of perfection of mine. We are now in a general relativity between all possible opposites, according to Einstein. They are all present in action. Electromagnetic unit and the material-antimaterial unit act together. Being units, they are worth one. In their simultaneity they combine thus. +1 times -1 equals -1. If the universe, which reveals in its name that it has only one direction in time, is present to us, this happens because it exists in relativity, which divides opposites into each other, instead of combining the two equal and opposite actions and multiplying them. Since division is the opposite process to the product that leads to -1, division inevitably leads to +1, the equal and opposite value of -1. The very simple conclusion is that we are inside a coexistence that has been divided into two times in its perception. First, we will see the electric dynamics of light and matter dominate in bodies. Then everything will be reversed in its opposite, magnetic and antimaterial setting, which will lead back to the final cross-balance between opposites. The physicist and philosopher who has sought to reason only in the first real time, without placing any belief in the imaginary side that will certainly follow, is such a fierce faithful who believes in the direction of appearances as to be tender for his fierce stance against those who come to us for his just faith in the world and in what will follow. Whoever starts from scratch and wants to have liquid money in his hands has only to hope that someone will lend it to him. So the real universe, in order to have what it has, had to have one, Almighty, with the absolute power, who gave it what it has, whatever it is. Physicists are in total disregard of Galileo Galilei's real innovation. The earth revolved around the sun, but from the earth it appeared the sun revolved around the earth. In other words, the real involvement led to a dynamic equal and contrary to the real one. Physicists are well aware that time also advances in cycles, but they have not learned Galileo's lesson, and therefore they judge, they believe, that all dynamics seen from within the cycles are true and not the opposite of true. When the sun is at sunset it appears so because the earth has come to that beginning, to the east, where the dawn of day appeared. So our life, it repeats for all our real days. When it ceases in the material body and in the electric brainwave, its antimaterial and magnetic essence has arrived at the corporeal birth. In every real wire bounded between A and B, if the continuous flow of electricity goes from A to B, the magnetic one has returned from B to A. To have seen matter and electricity on the basis of opposite dynamism has created a dissociated reality dominated by the evil one who brings everything and everyone that has a beginning to its end. This mendacious way of showing dynamism changes the beginning to the end, so much so that when the body dies, there is the true beginning, in which the Absolute has descended into a body born from the dust of the tomb. The true 0 point of a complex life, such as ours, which exists in general relativity, is located at that turning point between the false life seen up to that point and the true life that descends from the heights of time. It is only once that 0 point has been crossed that the exact vision of truth begins, which conforms to the interaction between opposites, and which always leads to -1, to a universe that will return to the Absolute from which it comes, when its entropy really seems to have arrived. The absolute is indefinable by definition, since it does not suffer constraint or determination. Defined as indefinable is the God who is absolute, without limits or prohibitions. One absolute is both cause and effect. Christianity calls it God the Father and God the Son, in the unity of the Holy Spirit. This is totally reasonable, since if we want to liberate the absolute from the cause and effect dualism of Father and Son, we can only induce between them a unifying, spiritual relation, which grounds them in absolute one of mathematics, in which absolute numbers are total and without denominators. Absolute one is not the ratio 1:1, placed between two, even if it gives 1. The being and not being one of unity assimilates it to the absolute in its Holy Spirit, which then has both verses. The downward one proceeds from the Father, and the upward one proceeds from the Son, as written in the Catholic Creed. The effect of the real universe created from nothing, and in the image and likeness of this absolute duo in one, lies in the general relativity of the universe, which is likewise one as real and imaginary, one as electromagnetic, one as material and immaterial, one as action and reaction, all simultaneous. All those who judge to be totally true what is dynamically shown by the ever-advancing life, in the unitary time of the universe, are making a resounding blunder, and are believing in a truth that is disproved by true science, that which considers all the comings and goings of life and not just what they see and believe in only because they see it. Only the dumb and stupid behave this way, but woe betide them. This manifesto of perfection reaffirms the truth of Galileo Galilei's creed, and yet it moves, even for the real cycle of time. And it reaffirms all the erroneousness of the creed only in what I see of St. Thomas. It is the erroneous creed of all the experimental physics when, seeking the truth, it relies on the speed between the two opposites, seeing one on the basis of the other, and not on the simultaneous action of all equal and opposite entities. Our world is perfect because it nullifies one by one every determination, which is made through the infinite possible system, entrusted to mathematical calculation. Every determined act is always imperfect one, since there is, as perfect one, only the all and nothing. The truth is that infinite force is at work, of the omnipotence of what is absolute, and that it takes out of the way one by one all the real determinations in opposite values, both of the universe and of created life, which is in a perpetual and desperate struggle between good and bad, until it succumbs. But we are not witnessing the restitution of the loan. Repayment is a false, a gift is perpetually being given. We always see what is false and opposite to the true. And so it seems to us that we are returning the gift and that nature is evolving towards entropy. As for perfection, a rich young man came to Jesus, saying that he helped everyone with his possessions but wanted to be perfect. Jesus advised him to give everything to the poor and then return to him and follow him. The young man was convinced that if he did that, he would be anything but perfect. He was the only one who used his possessions to help others with them. If he too lost them, who would ever help again? And yet Jesus' advice was right, for the young man sought the perfection. For if the rich man had given everything to the poor, he would have been perfect in his selflessness. But in truth, since what in the real world appears to be given, in truth is received, his act would not, in truth, have been followed by the loss of all his capital. His perfect selflessness would be matched by his total gain, and by the very gain of all his real wealth. The perfection of do unto others as you would have them do unto you will occur, since perfection is in action and in truth, which enacts all possible justice. By Romano Amodio.